Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn with Lakeisha and Laura. Look at all those L's.
No.
We are so excited to be here today. As you guys know, Rethinking Church Strategies, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus as we've been planning some initiatives that we plan to roll out into in the future. One of those is our Rhythms of Life silent virtual retreats. And I know you guys are probably like, what in the world is that? What are you talking about? So I had to bring on the spiritual director, Reverend Laura Murray, who is going to be leading these retreats. So, welcome, Laura. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into the work of spiritual retreats?
Yeah, thanks, Lakeisha. And it's so great to be on here and to be with you all, whether recorded or live. So thank you for inviting me into this space. So when the pandemic hit and everybody was shut down, I found myself trying to figure out how to connect with God. Like I was struggling. I was trying to find time, and I was like, I don't even know how to find time with God. And I thought, I wonder if there's other people that are struggling to find time with God. Like, I wonder if they're having a hard time focusing or even finding quiet, because all of us were stuck in houses, right? All of a sudden you're finding yourself around your family, around others. So to try to find time with God, I imagine would be really hard for other people as well. So I decided to try out a little experiment. And so the experiment is that we would gather people on Zoom and just enough to kind of fit in a Zoom room for good conversation. So around 8 people. So we would come into the Zoom room and we would say hi, I would welcome, we would introduce ourselves, kind of say, hey, why did you come on this retreat? Why did you decide to show up here? And then we would connect with one another, and most people didn't know each other. And then I would start them off with a spiritual practice, something that would help them center, to quiet down. And then after that, it took about 20, 30 minutes, I would send them off onto a solitude and silence retreat with God. Now, this was hilarious because people didn't have places to go. So people would show up in their cars because that was their only solitude and silence that they could get. Some people showed up from their closet. I mean, there's just different spaces that people showed up with. But it was an hour and a half of quiet with God off of Zoom. And they had a guide that I had written with different spiritual practices that they would be able to walk through that would guide their time for an hour and a half. And then what we would do was we would come back on Zoom. And this is what I found out was going to be the secret sauce to the whole thing. It was coming back in community and sharing with one another how God had met them on retreat. Now, it could have been like, this was amazing, there was a breakthrough, or it could have been, this was really frustrating and I didn't know what to do in this moment, but I kept going forward. Or I was really confronted with some things in my life that I hadn't seen before, but I needed to. And so however people wanted to come back into the space, they shared whatever they wanted from their time with God, just 1 or 2 things. And I would interact with them, or one of our hosts of the retreat would interact with them. And then what was fascinating is people started responding to one another, going, oh, what you just said really helped me to name this. Or when you shared that, that actually gave me the confidence and courage to say something in the group. Or somebody would ask a question. Hey, I noticed that when you said this, this seemed like this. And so there was this really beautiful community interaction for about an hour. And so how it's, a virtual silent retreat is that we connect virtually, but we have silence and solitude with God. And so all those things put together, we experimented with it in March of 2020. I'm kind of losing my timeline. I don't know.
It feels like it all just flows together.
It does. And so that started. And so we've been doing a couple each month. And then that's grown into doing it for, denominations or for groups of people, whether it's small groups, whether it's leadership, things like that. And just creating this space, this guided, hospitable and generous and welcoming space for you to meet with God and for you to meet with others. And it's been really, really a beautiful time.
That is so amazing. I feel like one of the reasons I was interested in hosting this for our community is because so often as Christians or faith-based leaders, we're always so hopeful about the future and everything is going to be so wonderful and it's going to get so much better. And I don't think we spend enough time like really centering ourselves amidst the chaos to say, okay, but what if it doesn't get better? Or what if this is where we're going to be for the next 2 years or the next 3 years?
Yeah.
How do I center myself amongst like all of the craziness around me? Because so many of our ministry leaders are, I call it working while wounded, like they're broken, they're struggling, they're stressed out, and there isn't a space for them to really go and just like woosah, not necessarily like therapy where you have to talk through, but how do you have, like you said, that mindful time with God and to hear from God. And then you can take that to therapy and you can take that to Bible study or what have you. But how do you have that time with God in a guided way? So I love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And, it can be kind of scary,
Yeah.
right? Like the question that you just said, like, what's going to happen in the future? We're not sure. All those things, that's scary. And then to sit in quiet and solitude, which we want to be with God, but that's also scary because what might God say? And so we're facing all these scary things and we all do a great job of either avoiding or like taking it on. We're going to just accomplish it. We're all doing that. And I really see these spaces as an invitation for leaders to receive, which can also be scary, right? And so that's what these spaces are for, to be able to receive, to be able to really courageously go, okay, God, we're meeting together because I need you, and not I need you for myself. I need you for others. And so it's so wonderful. But just, if y'all decide to do it, I know that it's a step of courage to step in and set aside time for something like this for yourself.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your team members that will be helping to guide these, because it won't just be you. So you guys, if you decide to register for the retreats, you will actually get to work with Laura and her team.
Yeah. So 2 other retreat hosts is what we call them, are Katie Akister and Jeremy Bryan. So Katie is an incredible executive coach. She's a good friend of mine, and she used to be one of the VPs at International Justice Mission, doing work in their development department. And so she is familiar with the pressure that is on leaders, very familiar with that, knowing what it takes, interacting with different types of people, handling things, team dynamics, right? Let's go ahead and just say team dynamics, right, are sometimes a lot harder, staff dynamics, things like that. And so she's really familiar with those things, and she has a really wise and gentle approach, and really cares about growth and healing, and helping people through the places either they're stuck or wounded and tired. So she has been a gift to me personally, and then just professionally, she's amazing. And then Jeremy Bryan, I met him through some work I did with Fuller Formation Groups. So they brought a group of us in to learn how they do formation and year-long formation for churches. And so Jeremy and I were both in that group together. And what I received from Jeremy was just this spirit of curiosity, this spirit of interest, just his eye contact when he would listen. Appreciated that so much about him, and his creativity. He is he's a hip hop artist, and he is amazing with words and poetry. So he does a lot of spoken word, and he's also a chaplain at a hospital, a hospice chaplain. So he knows the hard things in life. And so he's also a spiritual director. So both of them are just incredible with how they hold space and how they hold digital space as well, which is a whole nother subject, but holding digital space for people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's the beautiful thing about this is, for a lot of people, when they think of retreats, it's like, oh, I have to go somewhere. And with this, it's just a matter of setting aside those 3 hours. Each cohort will meet for 3 months, twice per month, and then 3 hours. And, really having like that dedicated, intentional time. And I'm really excited about the next part that we're going to go into is like, what are the themes? Because
Yeah.
we worked really hard to create some themes for us that people can choose from. But I do want to address like the elephant in the room. And you and I kind of talked about this because I know that there's some of you guys watching and you're like, we know a lot of Black therapists and spiritual directors. Why didn't you choose one of them? Why did you choose this? And Laura's not white, but why did you choose like this other person? And I think that that is a real question that people might have. And I do want people to know that I'm not ignorant to that, but I was intentional about that because I do believe a lot of times when we choose people from our community, when we're holding those spaces, people have a tendency to be less transparent because they know that this person is connected to me or my community in some way. And so I chose Laura because she's not a part of our community, even though she understands our cultural context. So that when you all come into these spaces, you can be transparent without worrying about just like the trust factor that I think a lot of people have when they're in these group spaces and choosing or needing to be vulnerable. So can you just kind of speak to like your thoughts about that and just our conversations about why that is important and can be impactful?
Yeah. So Lakeisha and I both value speaking things truthfully and with candor and naming things. And so I really appreciate that you are saying this. And my skin is very white, but I grew up as a child of immigrants in Houston. I also don't have an accent, at least of my culture. So that also makes me, again, very, very white. But I grew up in an Armenian household. So my parents grew up in Tehran, Iran, and they immigrated here. I was born in Houston and grew up in Houston. Grew up amongst many, many cultures. The high school I went to was probably about 150, 160 cultures represented. A lot of us were immigrant kids. And we were second generation, and we were constantly walking in and out of cultures. So inside my house, there was Persian food, Armenian spoken. Like whenever I took lunch to school, like I was like, can I please just take like a normal like bologna sandwich, like I wanted the hamburgers and the hot dog, right? I wanted like all the American type things. And so I'm familiar with walking in and out of spaces. No, I'm not familiar, with what it is to have Black colored skin in America. I don't know what it's like to have the history that you all have had here. And the other host may be able to relate to y'all in other ways, but they don't have that history either. And so recognizing that there are so many things we can't relate to and connect with, but at the same time, I think there are ways that we can empathize in understanding the weariness of walking in and out of spaces, the weariness of ministry, and the weariness and the toll that it takes. Yeah. Even as gifted as we are and as you are, as incredibly adaptive people as you are and as we are. I had a professor of mine who's incredible. He gathered a group of women of different cultures in his doctoral program, and he goes, how come y'all are so good at adapting? Y'all come up with the best projects, the best ideas, all that stuff. And one Asian American woman, she goes, it's because we've been doing it our whole lives. We've been living this. And so all that to say, I think there are ways that we will connect, and we do want to hold that space for you. And we value you. We value you, and we want to hold that space, and we want you to be nourished and cared for. So.
And I think that that's important because I know that a lot of times we get so caught up on the race issue that we miss out on the experience of learning from each other. And it's like even though in the Black church, a lot of times, like, we're the ones fighting against racism. But then when it comes to, okay, let's walk together, it's like, oh, no, we can only walk with other Black people. And so I feel like, if we're truly wanting to do this work, then we do have to also be able to look past race in some instances, not when, it's hurtful or harmful
Right.
to you or your community, but if there's a chance to like build community and to learn from each other, then I think that is something that's important. So like I said, I just wanted to get that out there because I know there's some people watching this video and I can see their faces like, why she go get the white girl? But I really want us to get past that because, when we start looking at how do we build, the kingdom of God here on earth, it shouldn't be about skin color, but it should be about our hearts. And if we find people who have a heart for the work, then we should be able to embrace that. So we had to say that.
Yeah.
But I do want to share with them, what we are looking at as far as like these different cohorts. And again, like, thank you so much for the work that you did to create these. And I'm trying to get all this together. The work that you did to put together the different cohorts that we will be journeying through. Oh my goodness. And I just got a new computer, so y'all bear with me. It's like asking for all the permissions that I didn't know I needed to.
Oh no, yeah.
Right. So let me see if we have the right screen up. Yeah. Okay, so this is us. Yay, Lakeisha. So the first quarter, we're going to be looking at strengthen in rest. And as we said, you'll meet 2 times per month, January through March. And so tell us a little bit about this cohort and what that is going to look like for the attendees.
Yes. So when you think about the new year, you often don't think about resting. You think about, okay, what's there to do? Like, what do I need to add? What are my resolutions? But the invitation is to be strengthened as you rest in God and rediscovering rest. Just start off with that because I'm just going to go ahead and name that. I think some of us don't know how to rest. I have had to relearn how to rest, right? And rest looks different in different seasons. And so just coming back to this idea and invitation that God has of rest. And then continuing with that stillness. What does stillness look like? And just that it is holy. So we'll look at stillness. This next one, language of lament, does not sound restful. But as we walk through lament as a spiritual practice, especially in the Psalms, you see that there is an invitation to rest in God as you lament. And then there's contentment, which I think we all long for, and we want that. And so how contentment can steady us and strengthen us. And then moving from contentment into joy. This is something that I've had to learn. Like, I'm such a work hard first, play later person. And so really leaning into joy and how joy and play and all those things actually do strengthen us. And then continuing and just really looking, okay, how do we live faithfully? Like, as we are strengthened, as we are rested, how do we live faithful? And what does that look like? And how is God our strength in that? So that is what strengthen and rest looks like.
That is beautiful. And I think that, like you said, so many people look forward to the new year because it's like, oh, we're going to take off. But a lot of times we try to take off, but we're exhausted from Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and watch night. And so in our attempt to take off, a lot of times we find ourselves stuck because we're so tired. And so if you guys are interested in this one, I think it will be very helpful because as you're trying to take off, you'll also have a moment where you can just kind of sit still and hear from God to ensure that as you're propelling forward, you're actually propelling forward in the calling and in the vision that God actually has for you. So super excited about that one. Yeah. Then the second quarter, we are moving into satisfied by enough. This one was really good.
Yeah. So anybody have those questions? Enough? Am I doing enough? Do I have enough? God, will you provide enough? That enough word is, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And the invitation to be satisfied. And however God defines enough. right? Gosh, even as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, but I want more, God. I like want, I want
Right.
more than my daily bread. I want more than my daily bread. But so beginning with this idea of holding on to hope. So hope is something that seems really elusive, but that can be something that we can hold on to because of our faith. And so when we think about this idea of satisfaction and enough, there's this concept of hope, right? And how do we hold hope and not go, okay, make it this thing that disappoints us later, or what does it look like? So it's really looking at this idea of what holding hope looks like. The nearness of God, right? The satisfaction of having God near us, and knowing and growing and deepening in the nearness of God, and that being enough for us. Time for repair. This one's a real big one. And we need so much healing. There's so many places in our life. Sometimes it's more acute than others. And so setting aside time for how God is going to provide what we need for repair. And so what is his enough for that? And then that leads kind of dovetails right into the care of God. Like as we look at how God cares for us and how that is enough for us. And then moving into discernment, I feel like this has been kind of the word of the last 2 years. And I think even going into next year, right? That if you haven't really discerned things, well, there's been so much pressure that you're like discerning things, you know? And so as you discern, like, what is it that God has called you to? And are we satisfied with that call? And looking to that. So satisfied by what he is calling us to. And then contentment. We look at contentment again and being, not again, but I mean, that was in the last one, but contentment of just being satisfied. When I think about the Apostle Paul and just saying that he was content, and how, whether he had a ton, whether he had nothing, whether he was strong, whether he was weak, that he had learned contentment. So how can we learn that and then continue to be satisfied in that and in God, and continue to serve and to be able to receive what God continues to give us?
And I think this is a beautiful place for rest, because so often we're striving, and we don't take the time to just like kind of acknowledge like all that we've accomplished and all that we've already done. And to say, even if I don't accomplish anything else, even if I don't do any more, can I be satisfied that I've done enough? And for some people, they can't, because they're so like pushing and pressing and always going, that you don't just like recognize. Like I've had people even recently ask me, like, what drives you? And it's like, because I never feel like I'm enough. Like I can be honest and say, I never feel like I've done enough or I've accomplished enough. And so I need to recognize, like, how can I center myself and say, even if this is all that there is, it is enough. So really looking forward to this cohort. So I don't know, like maybe like I had you design these like specifically for me, and I'm just hoping other people join in, but this is all that I need.
Yeah.
Third quarter, which would be from July through September, we're looking at provided with riches. Tell us about this one.
So immediately we think about riches, right? With money, right? Which is not a bad thing, riches are associated with money. But we'll talk about the riches that God has given us. And so in all of these, there are riches in it. So rest, right? So if you weren't part of the other cohort and you're ready for rest, that is a rich gift that God has given us. Again, stillness, looking at stillness and how when we stop and slow down and allow things to go deeper, that there is a richness that is actually within us and that God wants to meet us in, that is really, really beautiful, and that he's provided. The next one is the gifts of confession, which people are like, I don't understand what you mean by that. But that the riches that we're reminded of as we walk through confession and assurance, and really the grace that's given us as we see our sin, right? As it's brought to light, and there's freedom, because freedom comes after confession and assurance. So that is a richness that we are provided with. Being together, one another. Lakeisha and I were just talking about how we miss being in person with people, that we just long for that. So being together and how that is rich. Generosity, being able to share whatever we have, those riches with others. And what does that look like to continue to receive and then to be generous with the riches we've been given? And then ready to move. Just what God provides for us. There's so many things that God provides for us, whether it's peace, whether it's gifts, whatever he has given us, he provides and he readies us to be able to move into the places that he has called us to. And so there is provided with riches and ready to move.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that that you use the term riches, because so often we've been conditioned to only think of riches in material context, but there is a richness in our relationship with God. And I don't think that we see that as a part of our wealth, and even the wealth that we pass along to future generations. Like, can you pass along like the gift of contentment, the gift of discernment? Like that's wealth. Like when you're able to embody those attributes and you're able to pass them along to your children so that they're not restless and discontent and scattered. Like that is that is a real asset that you have. But if we don't first learn that, then how do we go and lead others toward that? And so I think that this is really important. And this is coming toward the end of summer, where people are like gearing back up for the start of the new school year. And so it's very important to have like this centering time to rediscover your rest and to really like prepare yourself again. It'll be around this time, well, a little bit earlier than this, where we're about to go into the holiday season. So how do you really like think through what do I value? And what do I want to give to others? So yeah, I think this one's going to be amazing. And as you guys can see, we put up the link. So if you're interested in registering, want to know how much it costs, you can head over to the website. But we are going to end the year with Filled with Love. I love this one.
Yes. Yeah. So filled with love. And so the practice of presence, how are we present with others? But we begin with how is God present with us, right? And how is he with us in the everyday? How's the Holy Spirit with us? Like that Jesus chose to be with us. So this gift of presence. So we'll begin with that. We'll go and walking in change. I mean, we are like constantly walking in change right now. And how do we walk in a way that is loving? How do we walk in a way? How do we even walk in it? And I think the reassurance of God's love really helps us to walk through it, especially because when we talk about change, we're talking about loss as well. And so how do we walk in that? Well, there's a lot of fear in change, but being filled with love to be able to walk through that. The care of God, just his lavish love for us, that he just loves us and cares and sees. And so to be able to be filled knowing that he cares. Abundance, to be filled with knowing, oh my gosh, there are really so many things that God has provided, and mainly that God's provided himself, but that the abundance and that we are given things that we might give to others. And so looking at abundance, what we've been abundantly given, and looking at joy, right? Looking at this joy that he's given us, and that comes from him. And that will lead us right into Advent, and specifically kind of looking at just walking through that as we're there. That'll be at that last one in December, and just walking through and how we are filled with love because of Jesus, and because he came and that he is perfect love. So that'll be a real sweet one too, to end the year.
I love that. And and the holiday season is the perfect time to really center ourselves with these topics. And that's why we were very intentional in developing these cohorts that are not only centered around what you need, but also what's happening around you. Because I think that too often we minimize the impact that our environment has on our ability to be present in moments, because we get so caught up in the doing that we don't often take advantage of the stillness. So whether you already have a devotional life, you already have a prayer life, or you have a therapist, or you already have all of those things, this is not to replace any of that, but this is to add to those things so that you can experience a greater amount of pleasure and peace in your own life. And so I'm excited to partner with Laura to offer this experience to our community. We are limiting each cohort to 10 maximum participants. So if you want to register, go ahead and register at Rethinking Church Strategies /rest. Use that intentionally. And you'll see all 4 of the cohort options there. Before the cohort begins, we'll definitely have some information that goes out to the group just to help you to prepare. And then if you have any questions, there's a link on the page to Laura's website, so you can learn more about her and the other services that she offers. But, we're here to answer your questions and really to offer this as a service, which means we're here to serve you through this opportunity and to make sure that we develop healthy leaders. Too many leaders who are trying to do this work and they feel alone, they have anxiety, they have depression, people thinking about suicide, just because you're unable to center and process a lot of the emotions that you're dealing with. So this is an addition to some of the other emotional and spiritual work that you need to do. I promised Laura I wasn't going to keep her all day, but are there any like parting words or anything that you want to say to our community to encourage them to be a part of these experiences that we've created?
Yeah. So I think one of the hardest things as leaders is to receive. It is really, really hard to receive. And my encouragement is to take these retreats as an opportunity to practice receiving again. It's a space you don't have to lead. It's a space you don't have to posture. It's a space you don't have to put on a mask. You don't have to put on an image, that you can just come be and you can receive. And so you don't have to be like perfect in your relationship with God. You do not have to be like, I know all these spiritual, you don't have to, none of that. This space is a space that is protected for you, that it is a space that you can be brave and courageous with your own life with God and with others. And it's a place for you to receive. So my heart really is that this would be a space that would nourish you and strengthen you, so that you could do what God is calling you to do. But that receiving piece is really hard. And that is the invitation for you to come and to receive.
I love that, because we are conditioned to give. And so it's hard to receive compliments. It's hard to receive gifts sometimes, because it's like, oh no, like I'm supposed to be doing. And so I love that. So we invite you all to receive your peace, and to receive in a space where, as Laura said it so perfectly, you don't have to posture, you don't have to put on a mask. And again, that's why I wanted an outside facilitator who does not know your context, doesn't know your church, doesn't know, where you pastor or any, or where you're ministering, where we can all come into space as just beings who are worthy of God's grace and who need to feel God's love, so that we can go out full of those things as we attempt to heal others. It's hard to heal others when you're bleeding on them. So
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time. We are excited to kick off these cohorts in January. And of course, you guys know, like, we'll be posting more information about it until the cohort fills up. And then we'll be sharing the additional cohorts. But definitely want to encourage you all to make the investment in yourself. So often we look at investments like the stock market and all of these other risky opportunities, but this is something that is not a risk, but it is something that you are investing in yourself, and you will get a return through your peace from the experiences, and growing with a small community of other people. So Awesome. Well, thank you again, Laura. Thank you to everyone who is watching, whether live or the replay. Hit the link, go check it out. And if you have any questions, use the contact form on my website. We'll definitely answer any questions that I can. And if it's something that Laura needs to answer, then I'll send it over to her. But we really want you all to go into this with confidence that you're going to get what you're seeking. And so it's not, some gimmick that we're offering. It's not about all of that. It's really about us wanting to pour into you all. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.